Oh my god, the Amazon delivery truck is 9 stops away. Okay, well.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to our second season of the Artist and Storyteller Speaker Series. My name is Paul Kikuchi. I'm music faculty at South Seattle College, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our moderators for today's conversation with Syrian-American director, writer, artist Shereen Lani Younes. Before I introduce Steph, Lexi, and Shereen, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement to set our intention and energy before we become immersed in the conversation. So we would like to acknowledge that the Artist Storyteller Project is located in West Seattle, the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. Members of our team were born and raised on the traditional lands of the Suquamish, S'Klallam, Chumash, Tongva, Shawnee, and Kickapoo tribes. And we would like to honor the stewardship of these indigenous peoples, whose land and stories we now have the privilege of having been shaped by. We would also like to express our hope that our land acknowledgement and others like it are just a first step, and that land acknowledgements alone don't do a whole lot for Native people. If you live and work in the Seattle area or on occupied Duwamish lands, we hope that you'll consider giving monthly to Real Went Duwamish, and that you'll attend and support the wonderful events that take place at the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center. You can also take the time to educate yourself on the treaties that impact Native tribes in your area, many of which have not been honored by the United States government. So thank you. Now a bit about the Artist as Storyteller series for those of you who are joining us for the first time. The Artist as Storyteller Speaker Series was fueled by a desire to put BIPOC artists, performers, and activists directly into conversation with students and the community, and to create a new space for human connection, celebrating creativity in all of its forms. Our second season explores the theme Return. I'd like to welcome our student moderator, Alexis Bonaparte. Lexi originally hails from Chicago. After attending high school in Arizona, Lexi moved to Seattle in 2016 while on an adventure to find out who she wanted to be. She's currently enrolled at South to get her AA in political science. She hopes to adventure over to the East Coast to complete her BS in political science and then attend law school with a focus on constitutional law. She wants to become a federal prosecutor and prosecute sex crimes. She also hopes to help individuals who were wrongly convicted or are on death row. Lexi is a fur mama, 2 cats and a dog, as well as an avid gardener and cook. Hey, Lexi.
Hey.
Hey, welcome.
Thank
Our
you.
faculty co-moderator, Steph Hankinson. Steph is a tenured humanities, drama, and English faculty at South Seattle College. She is also a director, performance critic, and actor. Before moving to Seattle to pursue her PhD at the University of Washington, she served as the managing director of the Davis Shakespeare Festival and the artistic director of Common House Productions. She's a founding member and contributor to Seattle-based performance critique collective Deconstruct. Her artistic values are rooted in utilizing non-traditional performance spaces to democratize art and build creative community in new environments. What's up, Steph?
What's up, Paul? How you doing?
Great, thank you.
Thank you
Great
for
to
that
have you here.
intro.
Yeah. And now I'd like to introduce our wonderful guest artist, Shereen Lani Younes. Welcome. Shereen is a Syrian-American director, writer, and artist. As a filmmaker, she writes, directs, produces, and shoots films and music videos, collaborating with musicians, filmmakers, comedians to creatively push the boundaries of cinema and herself, committed to expressing honest and courageous work. She self-published her first poetry collection, Dime Piece, in 2016, and is currently writing a second poetry collection, as well as her first feature film. Her work has been featured at New York Museum of Modern Art, IndieWire, AV Club, NoBudge, and the European Independent Film Festival. She also co-hosts the podcast Ethnically Ambiguous on the iHeartRadio podcast network, delving into the experience of people of color and marginalized communities while raising awareness about significant world news. What's up, Shereen? Welcome.
Hi. Didn't know you were going to read all of that, but that's very nice.
Surprise!
Also, when I sent that, it's dated now because I finished that feature and my second book is out. So
Nice.
Busy.
Updated
Can't wait to talk about it
version.
all.
Updated version, yes. So thank you for all who are joining us today as audience members. Feel free to submit any questions as we go along today or comments for Shereen into the chat, and we'll do our best to get to all of them in the Q&A section at the end of our session. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lexi, Steph, and Shereen, and I'll be back for the Q&A in a bit. Thank you all for tuning in today. It's great to have you here.
You're the best, Paul. Thank you.
thanks.
Shireen, welcome. Lexi, welcome. This is so great. And full disclosure, Shireen, how long have we known each other? We've known each other for
A lifetime.
a minute, many lifetimes.
Yeah. I probably met you when I was like 19.
Yeah, we met in college.
Yeah.
And we made some art together and then went our separate ways. And here we are talking about art again.
Yeah, meant to be. Yeah.
Cool. So before we dive into the million questions that Lexi and I have for you, I want to just show the audience your director's reel. Is that cool?
Yeah, go for it.
Great. Here we go.
I won't watch though. I'm gonna
Okay,
look
good.
away.
You can hide your face. Thanks for letting us share that. I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of a flavor for what your films look like, how they feel, the tone of that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So how did you get started working as an artist, right? How do you define yourself as an artist?
I don't know. I feel like the word is really strange to me. I mean, maybe it's a little bit insufferable. Not insufferable. I just feel it's hard for me to be like, I'm an artist. I've always loved poetry and photography since I was younger. I think that's where it started. I just needed to I've always had a hard time with my emotions, and I need to find a way to get them out. And so that started with poetry and photography. Mm. And then I feel like filmmaking was like a perfect marriage of those two things. But yeah, I honestly just think of it as like, I have to get something out. And so I have to like do something about it. And if it becomes something that I share, then that's what it is. But for me, art has been like therapizing myself, like just trying to understand myself and my emotions better.
Yeah, and you mentioned like filmmaking was sort of the natural progression from poetry and like, you know, still photography. And so what led you into that? Like, were there defining moments that got you into filmmaking? Like, how'd you pick it up?
I don't know. I've always been a very visual person. Like I always just imagine like visuals in my head, and that's why I really love music videos, is because like they're just visuals that you can put together. And usually that's what happens when I think of a project. It's either like a visual that I want to make come to life, or like a line of dialogue that maybe becomes a poem or something. But yeah, I think it's also, I'm just fascinated with the idea of like freezing something in time. I can get into this later if it comes up, but I'm like very obsessed with the concept of memory, and also terrified of losing memory. So I think in like my cycle, like if I really want to dig deep into my psyche, I think it's also a way for me to like try to capture something the way it is in that moment, because it feels honest or something. I don't know.
I love that. I mean, I think like so many artists, right? Like that question of why we make art, like what I'm hearing you say is like, I had to, like, it wasn't really like a choice. You're like, this is who you are in all these different areas. And so like, do you think of like influential moments in your evolution as an artist to kind of like give us a picture of maybe how you've grown since that like early photography, early poetry? Like, are there things that stand out to you that are markers in your sort of artistic life so far?
Yeah, the two things I just thought of were, I like lived in my high school's dark room in high school, so I think being in that dark room and like seeing an image like literally appear in front of me was very like magical. And I think when it became filmmaking, like when I wrote something and then saw it physically manifest on this set in front of me, it's like, it's a feeling I couldn't replicate anywhere. And yeah, it just felt really cool that I could make something myself from something from my head. So I think I remember those feelings really well versus just like physical. I've gone into like certain things. Like maybe the MoMA was pretty like a huge highlight for me, but yeah, it's more about the feeling of like creating something that used to just be an idea or like an image. Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow, you've kind of answered some of the questions that I wanted to ask about how you kind of get into the different mediums of, you know, film and poetry, and you just kind of want to, you know, get something down and express yourself. So do you ever consider like your audience or who's going to be receiving your art, or, you know, what their perception might be, or does that go into the development, or are you just more so just trying to get it all out and you know, just express yourself, and they take it?
Yeah, I think it's usually the latter. I think there's only one project I can think of that was made with like a very clear intention, and that was this film I made called Undercover, which was like specifically about one thing I wanted to mention. But I think usually it just starts as me, and maybe this is a hot take, but I do think art has to start for something that you just make by like for yourself first. It doesn't feel honest to me if it's done any other way. So yeah, I think my first audience is me. And if it gets out there, it's out there. And if someone connects to it, I think it's because it comes from an honest place. But Yeah, there's a film I made called Fall. That's like around 20 minutes. It's my longest film. But everyone told me to cut it down to 10 because it would be more like festival friendly or something.
They're
Or
like, this is more marketable. Like, sure,
yeah,
like edit yourself in
Yeah.
this way.
yeah. And an editor cut it down to 10, and it just wasn't the movie. And like, I think of that moment being like, if you have to cater to something that kind of just takes away from what the art is. Like, art shouldn't be about needing to modify it to get into some irrelevant festival. Like, it's festivals aren't the end all be all. Let's just like, that's an example. I think what I think about it as is like, competition doesn't exist in creativity. It shouldn't. Everything is so subjective.
Mm.
And yeah, if you have the luxury to choose to make art, it shouldn't be contrived, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I'm wondering about that like tension that you're describing in filmmaking between you as the sort of like director or primary like creative force behind something, and then the role of like an editor. And what is that like for you? Like, how does that get negotiated when you're working on a film project? Like, you know, the example of Fall of like, oh, cut it down, it'll be better for festivals. Like,
Right.
is that typical, or is it, you know, like, is that the relationship between editors and like?
Well, that experience, I loved the editor that I worked on with Fall, because he was also the DP. But that experience made me want to edit my stuff because there were things I would have done differently. And I love editing. I'm definitely not great at it. Like, I want to be better, but it's very fun for me. So it's nice just to kind of like have a skill that I am trying to work on. But yeah, usually, I mean, if you're working with a good team or a person that understands what you're trying to get at, editing is usually pretty fun regardless of who it's with. I think it's just about surrounding yourself with people that, like, I don't know, it's just so cliche, but like in it for the art.
Yeah, and like get your vision too, right?
Yeah.
Like see what you're trying to make and understand that at some sort of like visceral level. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to talk a little bit more about your films and show one in its entirety that we can kind of like dig into. And so the one that I want to look at with everybody is called Intro to Memory. And then what year was this made? Just so we've got a little context.
I think it was made in 2020, fall of 2020.
Okay, great. And so this is like the short film, right? We've got about 3 minutes here. So I'm just going to let this play and then we can chat in depth about what's going on here.
Okay, cool.
I've been struggling to write what I want to be my first feature film. It's based on my personal memories of Syria and my attachment to these memories. They are the most sacred things I have housed in my brain. But I can't write it. I never understood the concept of home. Being surrounded with people who sort of looked like me in a place that constantly pulled me toward it. That seemed close. As close as I could get. Memories of this makeshift home are all that are left. Even if returning was an option, my family is scattered. They're not there. They won't greet us at the airport and caravan us back into the city in my uncle's orange Volkswagen van. We won't eat boiled corn cobs in my grandparents' apartment on the second floor. We won't cram into the living room with the old television set, and we won't shell pumpkin seeds with our teeth. No watermelon on the balcony. I won't pass by the room reserved for smoking and see my uncles and aunts and parents seated behind patterned glass. The country is crumbling into rubble just as my memories are. Parallel lines shooting through time, and an empty space. A symbolic erasure made so brutally literal with every demolished building and every slaughtered child. They all look like me. The immense privilege of even experiencing survivor's guilt in this circumstance is overwhelming. I'm a fraud. Syria was never mine to lose. And you can't lose what you never had. It is absolutely disgusting to me that I'm able to make such an atrocious massacre of a people, of a land, the loss of great history and generations, about myself. I'm the main character of this apocalypse. Who am I to even try to make a film about you? I don't think I knew you at all. The fragments are all I have left.
What's it like watching this now? I mean, tell us how this has evolved.
I can't. Well, it's just so fucking dramatic. Like I mean every word. It's just like, oh my god, it's so cringe. But yeah, the feature film that I was mentioning in that video I've written, which I'm really proud of, that I finally just did it. But it's called Intro to Memory because I was working on this like giant project that was like an hour long at like minimum. I wasn't even done, but it was like compiling a bunch of home videos and videos of Syria with like a voiceover of myself. And I scrapped it because it was just so self-indulgent and I couldn't do it. But it was about this obsession I had with memory, and it's called Intro to Memory because it was the intro of this project that I had called Memory. But now I name my feature Memory, so it's kind of just like, it's fine. I'm still using that word. But yeah, it's like, even though I'm saying it's like cringe, the feelings behind it, I think, I don't know if and they're true emotions. Like everything I said is true. And I just needed to express them in some way, and I'm glad that like I did. But yeah, I don't like watching my stuff. I guess it's just I don't know. I think the only thing that I like doing is reading my poetry out loud, like poetry readings. I don't know why. I just find it fun to be on stage, I think.
It's so interesting because like when I was watching this, just as we just watched it now, like I was thinking that the voiceover feels like poetry to me, right? It feels like that sort of cadence and the sort of like emotional heft of what happens when you're reading a poem, but it's juxtaposed with those images that are so provocative and like so to me it's funny, you're like, oh, I like reading the poetry, but hearing it, I'm like, that is poetry, right? Like we're watching visual poetry, we're watching these sort of snippets that are meant to, at least in my mind, like evoke a particular feeling, right? That like sort of pastoral like image of that giant water wheel is so striking. Like and I wanted to know about that wheel and the choices you were making visually to like sort of return us like as the viewer, as you know, the kid jumps off into the water and then goes back up. Like what were you sort of working with visually there? Like what's your sort of visual language with that?
I think there's this devastating reality that like I can't really go back to Syria, and I haven't been back there in like over a decade because of obvious reasons. And so there's this obsession I have with like time and returning to something that's not even there anymore, or even if it is, it's completely different than what I remember. So yeah, just it feels like I'm just like trying to constantly rewind, and then I'm forced to actually get over it and just jump in. But yeah, your memory isn't the most reliable narrator either, because every time you remember something, it's different. That's just how your brain works. And so I think my overwhelming fear of loss and like losing my home or like my family or my memory, I think it kind of stems from this I don't know, like I think return is actually like a pretty apt description, because it's like returning to myself, returning to reality, and unable to return to where I really want to go to. I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally. And I mean, the way you're describing it now, it like, it has that feeling of like, it just slips through your fingers, right? To like have that experience and recall experiences and retell stories, right? But there's something that slips through, and it's just, there's a concept, you know, it seems intangible, like always intangible to like try and return. But we're drawn to, right? Like, I mean, you're clearly like drawn to these spaces and the stories there and the memories there, which I think is really awesome and fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's just where my obsession with like photography and video even comes from. It's just like freezing something in that moment. And I took that video of the water wheel when I was 16. So, and as I was making that bigger project that I scrapped, I was so annoyed with myself for not taking more videos, because like, how would I know? That would be like when I was, I think I was 2021 was the last time I was there. So, or 20,21, not 2021. But yeah, it's, I don't know. I don't know how else to deal other than like, yeah.
I think most people don't like, I'm just thinking of any exposure I have to like seeing images of Syria, like it's always that interlude that you have of like the incredible violence and the bombings and the like buildings being torn down. And so to see spaces before that is very impactful, I think, for a viewer as well. So I appreciate that you took it. I appreciate that we're allowed to see it in this way, and that you're sharing that with us, because it's not something that I think most folks in the US have like much access to except in the news, right? And so it's a different way to tell stories through accessing your memories, which is so incredibly personal, and through your family's connection there. So,
but it feels like when the memory dies, like it's just it exists in my head. This is where the fear comes from. It's like the older I get, the fuzzier it gets. It will live and die in my brain, even if I try to recreate it. That's just devastating to me. But that's reality. So that's what brains do.
I thought it was beautiful. Your words were very impactful. And you mentioned how your family, you know, your memories of your family and being in Syria. So where else, where do you draw inspiration from your family? And how do they appear in some of your short films? And do you have anything that you are like currently working on where you are incorporating that like return to, you know, return to wherever? Or what is a return for you? What does that look like at this point, now that you aren't gonna be able to see it the same way you saw it before, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. For a long time, I like kind of refused to make anything about my family or even being Syrian, because like there's this intense imposter syndrome that I have with everything. But it was specifically about not being Arab enough, not being filmmaker enough, not being Muslim enough, or whatever those labels were, that I was just like, I don't have any agency or authority to talk on this. So most of the things I've recorded with my family are kind of just for me. But that bigger project that I had called Memory was really about my family and about all of that. But it just ended up, it felt too, I don't know. I guess there are some things that are too sacred for me to like even try to explain them, because I'll just butcher even like my attempt. So some things I think need to exist just for the person themselves. But yeah, I think, I mean, everything stems from this like fear of loss. And I only kind of recognized that a couple years ago. There was something else I wanted to say. Oh, I think a huge part of my inspiration, or like, I'm gonna watch this again if I ever do, and I'm gonna be so mad at myself for saying and so many times. But
you're nailing it. Don't even think about
You're
it.
good.
I've always had very intense dreams ever since I was a kid. Very vivid, sometimes really scary. And I've always kind of like proud, like been proud of myself for having a good memory along with that, or like very intense deja vu or whatever. All those things are related to me. And I think my obsession, or like this dream realm that's always fascinated me, that's the feeling I would love my style, whatever that is, to have. I'm obsessed with this like surrealist, this line, this very thin line between dreams and memory and reality. I think that's where a huge part of my inspiration comes from, is like this unknown place that kind of exists all the time. Yeah.
I can totally relate to that. Sometimes you find the best inspiration, something you wouldn't even think about in just your natural state of being, until you fall asleep, and then always having that like pen and paper next to your bed so that you can instantly write it down, so that that memory feels so different when you come out of a dream. So I can completely relate to that, and I can see where you could go with some of your art. I can see where that inspiration lies within.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad.
I know we wanted to chat too about your poetry, like to sort of pull away from the visual and the film. And yeah, I mean, you've just released the new collection, Archive.
Actually, it's been. Can I go get it? It's been delivered.
Is it at your door?
Yeah,
go get it.
From the house. BRB.
Sure. That's fine. So Shereen will be right back, but the poetry collection is now out, and I think we're going to see the first copy that she has seen of this new collection. And as Lexi and I were sort of looking through what is in her old collection, Dime Piece, there's a lot of themes related to dreams and like this idea of writing down what is coming out of these non-waking, sort of like fully cognizant moments, I think, for Shereen. And we'll have to ask her about that when she gets back.
Definitely.
You write down your dream?
I used to. I should probably start again, because there were some of the most vivid stories that would come out of just waking up and just putting them down, and then going about your day, and then coming back and actually reading them, and then you're like, oh my god, that is amazing.
I would really recommend
happened.
Keeping a dream journal.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that this is in real time. Like that box legit got delivered, and we're pulling out the collection here. Let's see it.
Hold on.
This is completely unscripted.
Okay, so. Oh, sorry. I did not think I was actually going to do that, but then I saw it was delivered, and I was like,
let's see it.
This is, I'm like out of breath. This is the new collection that I released like a week or so ago. I don't even know. I guess it's mirrored. I can maybe like make it.
No, it looks great. It looks perfect.
Okay. It's just like.
And so you did the cover art as well, right?
Yeah, I didn't take this photo, but I like made.
Sure.
I put words on it, but
So tell us about Archives. I mean, you're holding it. How are you feeling? What is this collection all about? And there's Dime Piece, the older collection.
Yeah. Well, okay. The funny thing about both of these is that I kind of published them like spontaneously on a whim. I had the idea to publish them like 9 p.m. One night, and I was like up until 4 a.m. the next day, like just making it all happen. Whether it was like finding the art or whatever, I hadn't planned anything. I'm like genuinely going to.
You're good. We got time.
But no, I always have like a running document of some kind of like where I write poetry or where I write things, like lines of things I think in my head. I incorporated some dreams in this from my dream journal, actually. And I think the honest work idea really impacts how I write poetry, because I don't, this is like not the way poets, in quotes, like make poetry, but I don't edit my poems. I kind of like leave them exactly how I wrote them in that moment. And I put a date on them, and I leave it chronological, so it's almost like a diary.
Oh, interesting.
And I know it's like, as a writer, you should edit your shit and make it as best as it could be. But for whatever reason, my brain won't allow me to do that because it's not honest. And I think it's like not that it's more that's just my issue. You know what I mean? It's not for anything else. But hopefully in the next one I can kind of get over that and only put the good ones in, because I purposely kept so much crap in here for honesty.
I mean, it's so interesting.
But-
like, it's a different kind of project, right? If you're saying like, this is the whole thing, right? And you're allowing people to have access to that. I think it's like very brave, honestly. Like it's such an interesting choice. And I think one a lot of people wouldn't be inclined to make, right?
I would hope it shows some type of growth, you know? And for me, poetry has always been really personal. So I think being this personal is the only way I could actually say, like, write poetry or share poetry. It feels false for me personally. There's no right way to do anything. But yeah, I'm really, I'm proud of myself for putting it out there. It's like feels so cool. Again, like seeing something come to life in front of you, like holding something that you've like written is like really freaking cool.
You're like
cover is really
right
smooth.
You're glowing. I mean, this is so special. What a weird timing thing.
It's such a weird, yeah, it's meant to be, I guess.
So
Sorry,
it sounds
okay, I'm
like
back
they're
to
very, you're good. It sounds like it's really raw, and I love that. Would you like to share one with us that you feel is fits the moment in regards to maybe our theme, or even just close your eyes and pick one? I mean, it's just so random that it, you know, came and it got here just at the right
I love
moment.
moments like that where it's just
Well,
like
that's very Shereen, right? Like this whole experience is sort of feeling like your work is sort of like, this is how it is. Like,
yeah.
embrace the like aliveness of being here with us in this moment, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I have one that I can think of on the spot that fits the theme, but I can read one. I like reading this one out loud because I think it's like, I don't know. It's one of the only ones I write that I've written that rhymes. Because I usually just like, I don't. But I'm gonna take one more deep breath to catch my breath. God, I really need to work out. Okay. It's called Limb, Limb. Okay. I pinned a branch to my wall months ago with leaves full and green. Even though it belonged in a forest, I still kept it between every last breath, teetering on the edge of life and death. The branch casts a thin shadow on my wall. I water it with lies and light so it can stretch, try to leave, and grow tall, until the night, like every night, when it has to crawl back. But I didn't think this through, because now, looking at you, colorless and drab, your leaves aching for the floor. Tell me, did I kill you, or were you already dead? Did you feel nothing for me, before or after you slept in my bed? Yeah, that's a poem.
I love it. I'm letting it sink in.
Great.
You're so visual in your poetry too, right? I mean, like I was just thinking, you know, before we were trying to say like, okay, you work in all these mediums, you're a visual artist, you're a podcaster, you're a poet, you're a filmmaker, right? But all of these things are inextricably intertwined. Like, you're so visual in your language too. I could see these images sort of appearing, right? You invite us into that visual space, even though it's words, right? Which is like,
I'm glad that you saw those images, because I think you're right. For me, all the mediums are related, you know, and they inform each other even. So yeah, there's no distinction for me usually. It's just like all one big expressive blob.
Which is kind of unique. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I have to like stay in my lane, right? I'm a poet and this is what I'm doing, or I'm a filmmaker and this is what I'm doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I felt that way for, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, you're just bumper cars. You're just like all the lanes. You're just swerving.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to
down the
believe
highway.
that. I'm definitely trying to make myself believe that, because I'm in this hellhole called LA, and everyone here is not everyone. It's just I've been here for a little bit too long, I think. But yeah, there is this pressure of like you have to commit to just one thing and you're gonna get really good at it and that's how you succeed. I did stand-up comedy for a while, but I ended up not doing it because I was like, I can't commit to just this one thing. Everyone else is like going to mics every night and everything. Like I felt like I had to quit because I was like, I want to do so many other things.
Yeah.
So there's like that stupid saying, like jack of all trades, master of none. I kind of really believe that that's how I am. Like I'm not a master at anything. I don't think anyone is, but I kind of like the ability that I have to dip my toe, for lack of a better phrase, into like different things and see where it takes me, and use whatever medium I need in that moment. Like recently, I'm thinking of getting back to making this style of art that I did before using nail polish.
Ooh, can I show a piece? I know
Yeah,
you got
please,
some on your
yeah.
website. I'd love to show some.
Yeah, but I think I need that recently because I need to do something with my hands. I need to like really zonk out and meditate on just something I'm doing in the one moment. It's very hard for me to be present. So I think an activity like making something with my hands will keep me in reality, present moments.
Well, I think that's I mean, it's interesting how it bridges into like mental health and like these areas where I think when we create something physical, something with our hands, like there's a different relationship we have to the creation too, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's the difference in writing with a pen versus typing something out, right? Like that experience, the physical experience does something for us, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm trying to get access to show this visual art, but you mentioned tell us a little bit about what kind of visual art you've made in the past. Like where have you shown in galleries, or is this your stuff at home? What are we looking at?
It mostly started with photography, and then I really started getting into mixed media and making art out of like trash. I love trash. And this idea that something has been discarded, I think it really appeals to me. But yeah, I think my favorite kind of style I have is what Steph is showing, where it's this mosaic that I've made out of drops of nail polish. And yeah, I had never seen someone use nail polish. I was like gonna throw away a bunch of this stuff, and I was like, let's just see what I can do with it. And yeah, I really like I'm proud of myself for like making that up. And like it's one of those things where it's just like I'm not sure where it's going. I don't sketch it out or anything. I kind of just see where it goes and keep doing that pattern. But yeah, and then this is a placemat that I made out of discarded film cartridges that I like hammered with a hammer. So yeah, I love the idea of trash. These are just tissues of I put eye drops in my eyes every night because I have really bad allergies, and I would like back when I wore more makeup, I would get water your eyes and then put a tissue on my face to get all my mascara out of my face. And I saw that one time and I was like, wow, this is cool. And I just
used for the cover of Dime Piece, right?
Yeah, that's on the back cover of this one. Yeah. I don't know, I just like little details that like even in everyday life you'll look at something and be like, whoa, that's interesting, and it's just like a empty garbage bag floating in the freeway, you know what I mean? Like it's just things like that are like spiritual for me because I don't really believe in anything else, but there are moments that are powerful.
I love that you love garbage.
I mean, you are what you love or whatever.
I love that. Well, this is great. I just want to invite people, if you do have questions for Shereen, and for us to share with her, like feel free to throw them into the chat. And I think we're going to invite Paul back to, I'm going to stop the share here, and we're going to invite Paul back to sort of kick off the Q&A. But Lexi, I want to make sure that you get to ask the question about collaborative work and interior work. We've touched on it a bit.
Yeah, of course. So you, I guess, what feeds your soul with each of the things with your individual projects, poetry and painting, and your collaborative projects, podcasting and filmmaking? What, I guess, basically, what's the relationship with the collaborative projects and their differing with your individual projects?
Hmm. They're very different for me for some reason. I'm at times like independent to a fault, and I like for whatever reason need to do something by myself. But especially with filmmaking, I've learned that collaborating is like a gift, especially if you find people that you respect and that respect you. Um, so for collaborative projects, it really feels like uh, a combined effort, and like my brain is meshing with other people's brains and making this thing all together. It's kind of beautiful. But the stuff I make by myself is definitely more this need for self-expression, and like again, like this is not a word, I just made it up and I use it all the time, but like therapizing myself. Uh, and yeah, yeah, and that's all just vital to me. Like and everyone needs to express themselves, and I think like this is a different topic for a different day. But something that really bothers me about like this current world or like society that we're in is like, especially this country, uh is this obsession with like capitalism and this your life being based on productivity or work. Because in like a perfect world, like a better world rather, everyone would have the ability to express themselves and not even make art. I think art is just expressing yourself. Like art is like not, there's no label to it, but I think in a better world, that would be the main focus, is like understanding who you are and expressing it in a way that makes sense to you. And because that should be the whole purpose of life, is to self-improve and be introspective and understand humanity and the humanity in yourself. So I think in maybe in like retaliation to my frustration about certain things, I don't know, I refuse to not make it or something. Yeah.
So when you collaborate with people, are you trying to learn something different? Are you trying to feed off of them? Are you trying to have like a cohesive type of thing? I know you do your podcast. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about your podcast and how that came about, and how that, collaboration is with what were you looking for when you kind of started doing that in the first place?
Yeah, I definitely, people inspire me a lot. So when I am able to work with someone that I'm inspired by, it's kind of like a dream come true, because like everything influences everything. When it comes to like filmmaking stuff, yeah, I think learning from someone else is so important, and being open to not being too independent is really important, because like this very overrated idea of being like an auteur or whatever the shit is like so stupid, and I think that's not life. But when it comes to this podcast, me and my friend, she's Iranian American, I'm Syrian American, and we just always like kind of commiserated about this question we were always asked, like, what are you? And like, what are you really? But yeah, we were just kind of like spitballing ideas, because we wanted to work together to like understand like how we can like express this frustration. And it started as a YouTube show that was kind of short-lived. It was like 6 episodes, and then one of the producers of that show suggested we make it into a podcast. So that's where Ethnically Ambiguous came about. That's the podcast that I co-host. And yeah, now it's just become, it used to be more about news, but now we just kind of interview people of color and people that are doing important things in the world and maybe don't get the platform they deserve. And through that podcast, through talking to so many different people about so many different things, I think the main takeaway is that like we are all similar. There's no big distinction with anybody at a certain level, like at a certain core level of I don't, not soul, but like lived experience. So I think that's taught me most of all, is like, one, you never know who you're going to reach, and what that person will think or like connect to. Because the things that I've put out being like whatever, I've gotten responses that like really meant a lot to me. So it's like, even if it just touches a single person, it's worth it, in my opinion. Yeah, that's the answer that I have.
That's awesome.
Thank you. I am going to relay another audience question your direction. I'm appreciative of this conversation about language in your work, subtitles, poetry, spoken language, visual language in connection to memories, and also trans language, thinking about the use of multiple languages in your podcast, etc. Would you care to elaborate further about that?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with language. If I had to pick a superpower, it would be to understand and know every language in the world.
It's the best one. I'm so glad you said that.
Like,
It's like
flying. I would
who's
rather
picking anything else? Who's
Yeah.
picking invisibility when you could pick all
creeps.
languages?
Creeps
Yeah,
are picking invisibility. No, I am very fascinated by language, and I feel very lucky to have grown up bilingual. Arabic was my first language, and I think especially when I was in Syria, like you start thinking in that language, and even now there are certain words or feelings that can only describe in Arabic. There's no translation really, and I'm sure that's true with so many languages, if not all of them. But yeah, I think I never thought of it. I never thought of how the cross section of like spoken word and all of that or whatever, but I do like subtitles for that reason, this fascination with language or like seeing something written. And this is maybe lame or like not lame. That's ableist. This is not not the coolest thing to say aloud, but I think art at the end of the day is like the only thing that doesn't need a language, like the most basic kind of art, like whether like not something that has words in it or even has audio to it. I think people can connect with something regardless of what they understand or what they don't understand. And I think that kind of language that's like invisible and unspoken is so sacred, and it should be like preserved as much as possible. I'm not sure if that's answering anyone's question.
No, I think it is. It's making me think about why you're obsessed with garbage too. It's like there's these sort of universal things, these universal like attachments that we have to like the physical, the things we throw away. Like everyone has that, every place has that. And like to use that as a way to make something else, like you can always tap into it, right? Regardless of like background, what you understand, language, like it's untranslatable, right? Like it doesn't need to be translated.
Yeah. I'm also it's really hard for me to let go of things, whether it's like physical things or emotional things or whatever. So I think I do have an obsession with garbage. But I also
better than hoarding. I mean,
hey, I'm working on it. It's very hard for me to get rid of stuff, but I'm working on it. I'm not the minimalist I dream I was.
So you mentioned making work for yourself, and you know, first and foremost, and that's the most important. And if people get it, they get it. But for a lot of folks, there's a lot of anxiety about the judgment of others and about their work. So do you ever feel that? How do you overcome that fear of judgment in order to create work that matters to you? Or do you just not think about it and just put it out there first and then?
Oh, I definitely think about it. I think, well, at the end of the day, unfortunately, I think no one judges me as much as I judge myself. So there's that. But I also, I'm very occupied with this idea of being misunderstood or judged in a negative way, especially with this like competitive, weird part of the industry that I'm in. Because even though I think art is subjective and there's no hierarchy, that's like not the way the world works. But what was the question? I
think it's like, how do you deal with it? Like, what do you do?
How do you
overcome that?
Well, in regards to this book, for example, there's a huge amount of these poems about one single person, and I was never planning on releasing it for that reason, because it was like, if you know something about me, or like if someone knew me in real life, they probably would guess who it is, unfortunately. But with this one in particular, I just like, you hit the button and it's out and you can't do anything about it now. Someone already has it, you know? Like, I think for me, just doing this one scary thing, like and usually it's as easy as pressing a button or whatever, just to put it out there. the scariest part for me is doing it, and once it's out, like I just like, well, I can't control it now. I'm obsessed with control and hate giving up control. And so I think trying to relinquish that need is really hard for me, but I kind of just force myself to do it because yeah, and I know I don't like being judged, like absolutely. But I try also to just not take life too seriously, and it's getting easier the older I get, to be honest. I just don't give a fuck anymore to say
well, you get to the
it.
point, like, I mean, it's a practice thing too, right? Where it's like, if I'm putting it out there and I'm like dealing with the response, like, and I'm in the practice of that constantly, like that churn is maybe one of the reasons why I see you making so much, like having such an impact by creating in all these different ways, consistently challenging yourself and putting it out there, right? Like it is, I mean, I'm picking up your word, but like you're therapizing for all of us when you're doing it too, right? Like you're inviting everyone to ask those same questions that you're asking yourself, right? And to like do the thing, just like do the damn thing, right? Like put it into the world, right? And let it be received, you know, which is awesome.
That's nice to hear. That's a good, if my art does that even like 1% to that effect, that's amazing to me. But yeah, also I for whatever reason I do think age affects everybody, and the older I get, the sillier everything seems, the more irrelevant things seem that used to be important, and I think it's really freeing. I used to be terrified of age. I mean, I'm still terrified of aging. The concept of aging is still terrifying to me, but not to get too deep, but like I thought I would die before I turned 30. Like I just was convinced I wouldn't be able to stick around that long for mental health reasons. So when I did turn 30, it was very emotional for me. And so I think once I was over that, being like, oh, I'm still here, I was able to stick around. Well, now what? Like everything kind of just, I don't care anymore.
You've passed some sort of threshold. You're like in that unknown, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, wonderful.
So, aside from like garbage, of course, what other inspirations do you draw upon? Is there any other, like, is there any artists that inspire you, or any other genre that inspires you when you are formulating your art?
Yeah, I can think of a couple of writers and filmmakers for sure. Again, like I love surrealist work, so like anything like painting wise, like not necessarily Dali, he's like what everyone thinks about when you think of surrealism, but like just the genre of that and melting in different realities is appealing to me. But like Charlie Kaufman, who's written and directed a bunch of movies, it's very well loved, but like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of those movies that I saw when I was a teenager, and like it was the way memory and reality was like meshed was so appealing to me at that time, and it's kind of influenced my taste, definitely. And then like very film bro of me, but like Andrei Tarkovsky and Stalker was one of these like very slow, dreamy films that I saw that I was like, yeah, just it existed in a realm that wasn't real in a good way. And then Maggie Nelson wrote this book called Bluets that is like very depressing, that I kind of really respected the rawness that she wrote.
It's a great book though. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, just anything that's so raw and personal. I think Charlie Kaufman is the same way, where like so much of his work is like so self-deprecating in a way that's like maybe hurts himself. But I admire that. Yeah.
But it invites like so much to it. It's such an act, like when I'm watching Kaufman films or when I'm watching your films, frankly, like I'm so compelled by what it's asking of me to consider. And like I think that really evocative work is like it's I see Kaufman's influence for sure.
Oh, so. Thanks. Yeah.
Let's turn it over to Paul here. I know Paul, give a.
For the sake of time, we should probably wrap up. It sounds like we could keep talking for a while. Just I love how engaged we are in conversation. But Shereen, thank you so much for joining us today. And unpacking your new poetry book on camera for us. It looked awesome.
Thanks for letting me do that. I really love that you let me do that.
That was the best. That was the best. And I love before the interview even started, you're like, UPS is 9 stops away.
Right.
I mean, it happened. Yeah.
Totally. It was timed for you. Timed it
meant to
perfectly.
be.
UPS timed it perfectly.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are here joining us today, you can connect with Shereen at her website, which is ShereenLani.com. We'll have that linked on the Artist as Storyteller website as well. And if we didn't get to your question, you can definitely reach out to Shereen on social media, and probably she will get back to you with an answer. If you have a question,
really saying a lot.
Okay. I don't know. Hey, it's always worth trying, right?
Yeah, DM me on anything. I don't. Yeah, email, DM, whatever you guys prefer.
Cool.
Also, yeah, if you guys are interested in buying either of my books, don't buy it on Amazon because Amazon is the bad kind of trash. But you can.
Where can we buy it?
I would prefer people DM me and I can send them one from myself. Like, one, I genuinely make more money that way because I can cut out the middleman of Amazon. But two is just like I like being able to send it out myself and. Yeah, but
I wish we could bleep out Amazon too. Maybe when we edit this, we'll go back and.
I mean, I will. Amazon makes it very easy to publish, which is really nice. Like, I think in a perfect world, I would have this publisher that was like really believed in me and all my weird kind of work. But Amazon has this thing that makes it very easy to publish yourself. So I think I just want like a landing page for people to see, and then like.
And then they can reach out to you and buy your collections for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate you guys bringing me on and thinking I have things to say. And yeah, I am always around on the internet if anyone wants to find me.
Awesome. Yeah, and for those of you who are here as an audience today, we'll be continuing our conversations on the theme of return. In February, on the 22nd at 1 p.m., we'll be in conversation with Seattle-based community activist and artist Erin Shigaki. So you can visit our website to learn more, visit our website to get links to Shereen's work as well, and you can also watch recordings of all of our past Artist as Storyteller events on our site as well. And Lexi, Steph, thank you both so much for being here and being in conversation with Shereen.
Thank you.
What a delight. Thanks, Shereen. You're the best.
Yeah. You're the best. Thanks for thinking I'm the best.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank y'all.
Good.
Peace.
Bye.